Hi, Professor. My name is Taylor Gibson, and for my worship site report, I visited the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church located at 13555 Hillcrest Road in Dallas, Texas. The church was actually founded in 1915 from Greek immigrants in South Dallas off of Riggs and Singer. They relocated in the 1950s to Swiss and Apple, and then relocated for a third time in 1992 to their current site at Hillcrest. Going into this project, I was super excited to explore other faiths and to really have the opportunity to talk to other people about their perspective on religion and how they worship. As a history major, I'm a geek like that. But I found it a little bit difficult to find a church that was willing to open their doors and to really help me out as a student. But I finally found the Holy Trinity, and I was so thankful. Actually, this is my second time doing this video because I had such an amazing time. I talked for 20 minutes straight about my experience, so I am going to try to cut it extremely short. I had the pleasure of talking to Mr. Basil Zeros, who is one of the coordinators for the Holy Trinity School, and he is also in charge of the tours for visitors and students. He was so amazing and very warm and very gracious and very accepting of meeting with me and helping me learn about his perspective on worship and religion. And I'm a little hesitant to say religion because he told me literally himself verbatim that he and his church don't believe to look at their worship as a religion. They prefer to look at it as a faith because religion is in the head and faith is at the heart. And they really focus on just believing wholeheartedly in their faith and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and everything in their chapel and everything in their service has meaning and symbolism, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And he took me into the smaller chapel, which they use for these teachings and also for baptisms and for the children's school. And what was really awesome to me was the iconography. I mean, that's what was really prominent and very noticeable going into this church. It was immaculate. It's called Byzantine art, which is very stylized, and apparently you have to be very, very trained in this kind of iconography, and that they only allow men to do it. I'm unsure why. But men were just seen as the best for this particular job. And the history behind the iconography and what murals were actually painted in this chapel was amazing. Mr. Basil told me that no matter what Greek Orthodox church you attend in the entire world, you may not know their language, not everyone speaks Greek anymore, they don't teach their children any longer, but no matter where you go, you always know the order of service because it's always the same throughout any Greek Orthodox church, which I thought was very awesome. It was very homey and very warm and very welcoming to people all over the place. Even for someone like me, he just made me feel very welcome and very accepting. Very accepted. No, that's right. Anyways, again, I'm just looking at my notes, trying to make sure I cover everything, but don't talk too much because, again, I did this the second time because the first one was 20 minutes. Anyways, the Greek Orthodox Church was actually an outgrowth of the original Christian religion out of the Byzantine Empire, and it was founded 50 days after the resurrection of Christ. And they have two principles they try to stick to, which are tradition and scripture. In terms of tradition, again, the service is the same and the chapels are the same no matter where you go, which I thought was very humbling and very neat aspect of the religion. Kind of made everyone feel like family despite differences in location geography-wise. What was really cool in terms of tradition was they have what's called a censer, which kind of looks like a one-sided balance, and they light incense. I can't talk. Incense. And they would, the father, I think is what they call him, or the priest would swing what's called a censer in 3s or 9s, is what Mr. Basil told me, toward the bishop's chair, which is actually an elevated throne for the bishop so that he can look down on his flock, which is the people at the chapel, the worshipers. And the incense would blow this huge, puff of smoke because it's, lit incense, and the smoke would rise through the chapel. And the smoke was symbolic of the prayers of the flock up toward Jesus Christ, which is always supposed to be Jesus Christ and God, because Jesus Christ is the Son of God, an extension of God, is always the highest point in the church. And I looked up, and there was a huge mural of Jesus Christ on the top of the ceiling, at the highest point of the ceiling, which was absolutely amazing. On the opposite side of the bishop's chair, or the bishop's throne, were the chanters' chairs, which is still a very old tradition. But because Mr. Basil said that he had a Southern Baptist on the board of directors to try to keep them hip with the times, they do now have a choir that they incorporate into the service, but they still do have the chanters' chairs. They still do chant during the service. It was just really cool in terms of tradition, though, that the iconography was just immaculate, and there was a specific order to all of the disciples, and there was a specific order of, the icons of Jesus, and then his cousin David, and then the angel Michael, and the Virgin Mary with Jesus on her lap. And it was just really cool to see that no matter where you were, you knew what you were looking at, and that what you were seeing, because of the order and because of what might have been painted on what they wore, or what was in their hand, which I thought was really awesome. What's also very symbolic and cool was the elevation. So you have like your chapel and your pews, and then one step up was where the fathers and the priests and the chanters and the would be standing to give the service. Then one level up was the bishop's throne, and then another level, the bishop's throne might have been level with the sacred part of the chapel, which only men and only ordained people of the church can walk into. And it was supposed to be like a symbolic of the veil that the light is being brought into the darkness, and that the uncovering of the sins in the dark were available to the people, which was, again, very beautiful, very immaculate. As a whole, this experience was super amazing, and I was very nervous at first, but I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to visit the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church and had the chance to speak with Mr. Basil, because he was so knowledgeable and warm and humbling during this experience. I'm just trying to make sure I'm touching on all of my appropriate questions without going too far over. think I touched a bit of everything. He also, Mr. Basil, gifted me with the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed. We both stumbled on this word. It was very funny. Which was a creed that was kind of show it here without glaring it. It's basically the creed. It's the 12 principles or 12 foundation of the Greek Orthodox Church to combat heresies within the church. He didn't specifically say what kind of heresies, but it was created for that, and it was actually written in 325 AD. So it's something that has been with the Orthodox Church since the beginning, which I thought was really awesome. And again, in the front, you can't really see, but it is in English. And then the back, although not everyone knows how to read Greek any longer, it's not as prominent, but this is the creed in Greek, which I thought was really awesome. I cannot read any Greek letters, but it's still very beautifully written regardless. Which I thought was, again, very, very nice of him to let me take that home with me.